Welcome back to the DataDriven podcast, where we explore how modern data strategies fuel transformation across industry. My name is Kevin Keenan, and I'm Senior Director of Communications at Reltio. Today, we're diving into the life sciences sector, a world where precision is everything, data is often messy. From fragmented HCP and HCO records to siloed data trapped in disconnected systems, life sciences companies face a unique set of challenges. My guest is Sriraj Rajaram, Senior Product Manager at Reltio. He's been deep in the trenches helping life sciences companies build a real-time customer 360 view that unifies messy, multi-source data and transforms it into trusted, usable insight. We'll talk about what makes life sciences data so complex, the role of customer 360 in commercial effectiveness, and how improving data quality can directly impact patient outcomes, compliance, and the bottom line. Let's get into it. But before we get started, Sriraj, why don't you tell me a little bit about your role at Reltio?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Yes, as you mentioned, I'm part of the product management organization here at Reltio with a specialized focus on our customer 360 solution and platform. I've been in the master data space for a very long time, almost 2 decades. And this is just a logical extension of that role into the next area of interest.
That's a long time to be in the industry. So you bring a lot of knowledge to the table. That's great. So let's start from the beginning. Could you explain to us what is a customer 360 solution and why is it so critical in life sciences industry today?
Sure. A lot of organizations have solved the master data challenge, which is understanding who their customers are, who people within the customer organizations are, basically resolving the identity of your customers, your suppliers, and so on. As you've understood their identity, it's also useful to understand the additional data sets besides their identity, what their preferences are, how they review your products, what they think about your solutions and services, how they interact with your various teams within the organization, whether it be sales, service, or marketing, and how all of these customers that you interact with are interrelated to one another. When you can create that comprehensive view, it helps increase the efficiency of your processes as well as the ability for you to message in a more specialized manner to your customers. Imagine if you're a pharmaceutical sales rep and you are talking to a doctor. Obviously, it's important to know who the doctor is, what their credentials are, but if you also know more about the doctor in terms of which conferences they've attended or which websites they've browsed and how they related to other doctors that you may be talking to, that increases the ability for you to influence that doctor and create that sale opportunity much more significantly. And that's what Customer 360 is in a nutshell.
Yes, interesting. So as someone who's been in the industry for so long, how do you explain the evolution of what we have now today as customer 360 versus what we had, say, 10 or 20 years ago, even?
Sure. I remember when I started in the data management space, the be all and end all of the space was the data warehouse, right? Everybody thought about creating a data warehouse from where they would look at analytics, they would look at operational systems, and so on and so forth. But everything, if you spoke about data, it was all about the warehouse. And then we started chipping away at the warehouse because this warehouse was this big monolith that was presumed to do everything that you wanted around data. But that wasn't always the case because when you have such a large monolithic system in the organization, its capabilities aren't specialized. It's a generalized system. So then came about master data management, which is, hey, you want to understand who your customer is? You need a separate system that helps you do that, which is called master data management, which applies very specific principles of data management so that you can understand the identity of that customer. Then came about separation of analytics. Okay, this is how you do analytics or you do operational analytics and so on and so forth. And now the evolution is when you link all of these things together and you have your core identity of your customers, your suppliers, and you're able to link them with transactional behavior, what they've purchased, what service calls they've made, what marketing events have they responded to. Now you're getting this evolution from identity to the full comprehensive view of this customer that allows a better engagement with the end customer.
We've certainly come a long way. That's really interesting. So how do you build something like this in today's enterprise that serves so many different users that have so many different needs?
Sure. Let's just take pharmaceutical organizations as an example. There are various teams within the pharmaceutical company. There are commercial teams, there are R&D teams, there are marketing teams, and there are medical affairs teams, and so on and so forth. So if you were to take all of this, let's look at what each of these teams require, right? Commercial teams are interested, the primary folks in the commercial team are the sales representatives. They're looking to understand the physician, the doctor, or the hospital that they're going to be engaging with. They want a comprehensive view of that profile. They want to know who this doctor is, who this hospital is, what kind of interactions the organizations had with this pharmaceutical company in the past, what conversations they may have, avoiding a redundant outreach in some form of manner, right? So that's one form of it. The second part of it, if you look at it from the other aspect of commercial, which is the marketing, they want to be able to segment the audience, okay, which they want to be able to segment them by regions, by certain target groups, for example, cardiologists versus oncologists, and then run campaigns against them. They also want to be able to, if you are a direct to consumer, for example, if you are a medical device company and you have devices that directly touch patients, you want to be able to segment your patients. Here's a diabetic patient versus a different kind of patient. So you can segment them and then ship samples or targeted messaging towards them in a specific manner.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So let's zoom in on the pharmaceutical sales rep. What does their day look like before and after using Customer 360? Similarly, maybe take us through a use case for marketing as well.
Sure. Let's just take an example of a sales rep, John Smith. He's joined the pharmaceutical company and he's been allocated a new territory. In this territory, there are 30 physicians that he needs to contact and have conversations with. By using a customer 360 platform such as Reltios, John can start understanding which customers have had higher engagement. Like, for example, of those 30 doctors in his territory, 5 of them may be actively visiting the website of this pharmaceutical company, looking for documentation, making calls to the support groups asking for help on contraindications. Does this drug interact with another drug that they're prescribing for a patient? Side effects, so on and so forth. When John logs into the system, he's able to better identify which doctors he should be prioritizing for contact so that he can have maximum influence on them and also help achieve his goals and metrics for the area. Similarly, on the marketing side, when a marketer is trying to do an outreach campaign, let's say there is a new launch of a new therapy or a new drug, the marketer is able to, if they have the information that's provided through a customer 360 platform, they're able to better segment those audiences as opposed to making a generic email blast. And we all get those every day, right? And we just delete them. But the more targeted and more specific that messaging is, and the audience is also more specific, then there is more effectiveness to that campaign. So that increases the efficiency of the marketing campaign as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds really cool. From a product perspective, as the expert on the product here, what are the essential features that make a customer 360 work in life sciences? In other words, what's under the hood, so to speak?
Sure. I think the core features for a successful customer 360 platform, the core elements are, first of all, having a single unified profile for the audience that you want to reach out to, whether it's doctors, hospitals, patients, clinical investigators, so on and so forth. You want to make sure that profile is cleansed, it's deduplicated, it has the right set of demographics, and it's enriched so that you have more insights into, for example, the doctor's license credentials, and so on and so forth. Second part of it is you want the ability for the platform or the system to support comprehensive interaction history in a chronological manner. So you want to know every touch point and interaction that the stakeholders had with the organization in a timeline, with a timeline associated with it. So, for example, calls, emails, meetings, sample drop-offs. You want to have all of these available so that you can then get the view of the identity associated with all their interactions. Third, having a relationship mapping or some sort of a graph that shows the relationships between physicians, products, and other physicians or hospitals. So you can then create this many-to-many relationship mapping that helps you understand the influence of your network even better. Fourth, especially from a marketing standpoint, is consent and compliance management. You don't want to be blasting emails and messages to audience members who have explicitly stated that they don't want to receive them. That's in this day and age of compliance and privacy. It's a major criteria that the platform must support.
Yeah.
Fifth is the ability to provide at least basic analytics and insights, or the ability to integrate with more robust analytics and insights. I'm not saying that the Customer 360 platform itself has to be the analytics platform, but it should have some basic analytic capabilities like understanding what the engagement frequency is, doing some derived calculations such as lifetime value, net promoter score, or at least the ability to send it downstream to a more robust analytics platform that can do more slicing and dicing of the data that's required. Last but not least, the ability to integrate with third-party systems. There are a lot of third-party data providers, regardless of the industry you're in, whether it's pharmaceutical, financial services, whatnot, that are able to enrich the data set that you have and complement it with additional data elements and attributes that can help you create a better 360-degree view of the audience. So these are the key elements of a good 360-degree platform.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like it touches a lot of different departments across an organization. How does a company or an enterprise determine whether it's delivering value and what kind of value it's delivering in terms of KPIs or any metrics that might be tracked, specifically in life sciences? How do they know they're getting value on the customer 360?
Sure. Let's break this down. So the C360 platform is a platform that can be used by many groups within the pharma company, whether it's commercial, clinical, marketing, R&D, so on and so forth. So let's just take a few sample metrics from each of these audiences.
Yeah.
If you are in the commercial audience, then some of the metrics that you could use to measure the effectiveness of a C360 platform is, for example, sales rep productivity. With the help of such data that I mentioned earlier in the example, are sales rep able to prioritize and make more calls during a day, increase in the number of quality of interactions per rep, increase in the adoption rate of the platform per rep, for example. So that's a particular measure you could use. Also, what is the engagement and coverage? For example, percentage of target physicians engaged per quarter or frequency of touch points per physician should improve if the reps are using the platform in the current manner. And also, ultimately, it translates into better commercial outcomes like prescription lift or sales growth in areas where the sales can be tracked. From a marketing perspective, you can track improvements in campaign metrics, higher email opens, for example, if you're segmenting it correctly and you're actually reaching out more refined audiences, then the click-through rates or targeting should actually improve. There should be higher event attendance by key customers, and the conversion from qualified leads to sales opportunities might also improve. On the clinical side, you might see improvements in, for example, trial execution efficiency, such as average number of protocol deviations or queries per site might decrease if communication is improved between investigators and patients and such. Also, you'll have operational cost savings by streamlining trial management and reducing the delays. There are definitely cost implications, and that can be very beneficial for an organization. So these are some examples of how you could track the output and the impact of a customer 360 platform across multiple groups.
Okay, that's great. You talked about an MVP approach focused on HCP profile. How do companies get started with that without boiling the ocean, so to speak?
Sure. It's a great question. And I always recommend starting with an MVP because you can work out a lot of the kinks, a lot of the organizational roadblocks in an MVP manner without having to sacrifice too much time, effort, and so on. So ideally, if you were a pharmaceutical company and you were looking to experiment with, let's say, a physician 360, where you have the identity of the physician linked with all their interactions and behaviors, and you are now delivering that, what I would recommend is, first of all, storing their demographic information, storing their location and contact details, all of this in a cleansed, enriched, and deduplicated manner, associating physician specialty with the demographic information, as well as institutional affiliations and peer affiliations. So all of this would comprise of the physician's profile. Then you also would store or bring in interaction information, for example, promotional activities, such as how many visits have been made between a pharma sales rep and the physician, how many product samples has the physician been provided, and what kind of events has the physician attended. You could also bring in educational interactions, such as which websites they've been visiting, what speaker programs have they attended, and what advisory boards are they part of. Lastly, you could also bring in some additional interactions, such as consulting agreements where they've agreed for some paid consulting on market strategy or product design, where they've agreed to be part of a market research group or formulary discussions. So these would constitute some of the interaction data that you would bring in as part of the MVP. Third part is
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
The third part is derived attributes. For example, what kind of derived attributes do you think you want to calculate on this profile and interaction data? For example, engagement score, to indicate the level of positive interaction that a physician's having with the pharma company. Recency score, what is the most recent interaction that they've had with you, right? So these are examples of derived attributes. And then you could bring in third-party data sets, such as what is the volume of their prescription? Like, you can buy third-party data sets that indicate this doctor has been prescribing more of this drug versus your competitor's drug, so on and so forth. So you could bring in that information. So all of this would then enable a use case where, if you go back to that hypothetical use case that we talked about, where there is a rep called John Smith, and he's trying to plan his meeting with doctors. He could prioritize based on this. He could prioritize which doctors he should be visiting or interacting with based on their prescription feeds, as well as their interactions recently. He could also look at derived scores in terms of engagement to figure out which ones are already well engaged and which ones aren't, so he could prioritize them as well. And this helps him to not only prepare for the meeting, but also plan a script for the meeting that he could then use for engagement with that doctor during the meeting.
Yeah, so it's highly customized.
Yes.
Very good. How long would something like this take, or how long would you say on average it takes to get an MVP approach up and running?
Yeah, in general, that varies a lot. But what we've observed is we've seen customers go from 0 to 1 with such an MVP approach in under 3 to 4 months. It's pretty fast given the volumes of data that we're talking about. But we've seen a lot of customers achieve material success in 3 to 4 month MVPs.
That's fast. And how does that compare versus 20 years ago when you started in the industry?
Yeah. I think the fact that 20 years ago we didn't have SaaS and everything had to be installed, you had to provision hardware, and all those infrastructural requirements had to be catered for. That the infrastructural requirements alone would take you 3 months. Nowadays, with the advent of SaaS and Reltio being a leading SaaS platform in this area, provisioning is the matter of hours. And then all you have to do is get into the aspects of loading the data and managing the data assets within the platform.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Interesting. Speaking of Reltio, we've talked a lot about AI at Reltio and with our customers in the last few weeks. Some interesting announcements coming out about MCP, the MCP server. So there's a lot of AI coming into the product, but we're also enabling organizations to unlock their AI capabilities. How do you see AI enhancing the value of Customer 360, especially around next best actions, insights, or trial optimization?
Yeah, for sure. If you go back to that same example that we've been talking about, which is Rep John Smith, he's been assigned a new territory. There's 30 physicians in there, and he's trying to prepare his initial set of meetings. Now, without the help of AI, he would have to manually review the interactions and the history with those 30 doctors in his territory and decide how to prioritize. With the help of AI, conversational AI, he can actually ask AI to help understand, hey, which doctors have, their interactions, give a summary of those interactions, and help AI prioritize for him the doctors he should be meeting, the first 5 doctors he should be meeting. Furthermore, based on the interactions that the doctors had, for example, the doctors attended a recent webinar or a seminar, he could have AI craft an email that says, hey, thank you so much for attending a recent webinar. I would appreciate an opportunity to talk to you more about the new therapy or drug that we have. And AI could help craft that, send it to the doctor, and also send a meeting scheduling. So right here, you have compressed all this manual effort because you have all these insights within the C360 platform, and AI has access to that with the help of these large language models and such. Now AI can summarize that, draft an email, create a meeting schedule, all within context, right? It's not just a generic email that's being blasted, but in the context of how the doctor has been interacting with the company, AI can leverage all of that and craft all of these things, saving the sales reps so much time and efficiency. That's a big benefit that I can see as a very low hanging fruit that's easily achievable along with the MVP.
Great. Along with that, I guess one of the things that we also talk a lot about Reltio is when it comes to customer data, what should an organization or a leader, a data leader, IT leader think about when it comes to modernizing customer data?
Absolutely. I think life sciences has been on the forefront of managing customer data because it's a highly regulated industry and all the touch points between customers and the organization are monitored by regulatory agencies. B, they've been at the forefront of building this technology. I remember the entire concept of master data was actually built on the backbone of pharmaceutical companies. They were the early adopters of this. And now I think with the advent of C360 and AI, these are important elements that they should be thinking about infusing into existing platforms. Why is it important is because the C360 has been this elusive elixir that we've been chasing for so long. But with platforms such as Reltio and our inherent capabilities in unifying data, which is the foundational asset, we can now truly build a C360. And there's elements of zero copy that we've incorporated within Reltio. So we can readily access all this interaction data, regardless of where it's stored in your data lake or data warehouse. Reltio can access it, leverage it, consume it, process it, and provide that complete vision of the C360. And additionally, Reltio's ability to now support AI integration with our MCP servers and such, the ability to process that easily through large language models helps a lot of modern leaders in pharmaceutical companies bring the power of their data assets to actual business value, to actually create business impact. All organizations have massive data assets. A lot of these pharma companies have been around for 20 years, 30 years more. And so they have data assets that have been piling up. The problem has always been, how do we refine it? How do we consume it? And how do we actually translate that into business impact? Anybody can produce a report of tables and metrics and stats, but how do you translate that into actionable insight? That's the power of Reltio C360 combined with AI. And I think that's where customers should be thinking about is, how can we bring all those data assets that we have over these years into actionable insights?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, very good. Thank you so much. That was a great discussion. I really appreciate you joining us today and look forward to speaking with you again.
Okay, awesome.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the DataDriven Podcast. Big thank you to Sriraj Rajaram for sharing his insights on the critical role of Customer 360 in life sciences. If you're in life sciences and struggling with data silos, stale records, or complex compliance requirements, the message is clear. It's time to rethink your data foundation. A modern, unified Customer 360 isn't just a tech upgrade, it's a business imperative in today's environment. And if you're hungry for more insights like these, don't miss DataDriven in Orlando, Florida, next February 23rd to 25th. It's our premier thought leadership conference for data leaders and practitioners alike, and it's where the best minds in data and AI come together to share what's coming next. Visit reltio.com/datadriven and register today. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode of DataDriven. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious, stay data-driven.